Sa lahat ng manonood, manonood at sa video na to, hello, gandang hapon. Tutuloy ko yung pagbabasa ko. So, nasa habit 3 na ako ng The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. So, kahapon, sinagot ko na yung 2 questions nito. Yung unang question is, what one thing could you do you aren't doing now that if you did on regular basis would make a tremendous positive difference in your personal life? Which is, yun yung pagbabasa at saka yung pag-learn ng effective ways ng prospecting. Kasi nasa sa Manulife at saka more on sa sales din ako. So, nasa Queen Boss din ako. Queen Boss Society. So, gusto kong ma-learn yung effective prospecting. Then, yung what one thing in your business or professional life will bring similar result. So, yun yung na ilalago yung learning ko and makaka-learn pa ako more sa mga individuals na nami-meet ko. So, yung mga 2 tanong na yun, dito mag-focus yung habit 3. Yun yung sabi ng libro. So, we'll come back to these answers later, but first, let's put habit 3 in perspective. Habit 3 is the personal fruit, the practical fulfillment of habit 1, which is proactive, and habit 2, which is begin with the end of mind. So habit 1 says you're the creator, you're in charge. It's based on the 4 unique human endowments of imagination, conscience, independent will, and particularly self-awareness. It empowers you to say, that's an unhealthy program I've been given from my childhood, from my social mirror. I don't like that ineffective script. I can change. So habit 2 is the first, or mental creation. It's based on imagination, the ability to envision, to see the potential to create with our minds, what we cannot at present see with our eyes, and conscience, the ability to detect our own uniqueness and the personal, moral, and ethical guidelines within which we can most happily fulfill it. It's the deep contact with our basic paradigms and values in the vision of what we can become. So habit 3 then is the second creation, the physical creation. It's the fulfillment, the actualization, the natural emergence of habits 1 and 2. It's the exercise of independent will toward becoming principle-centered. It's the day in, day out, moment by moment doing it. Habit 1 and 2 are absolutely essential and prerequisite to habit 3. You can't become principle-centered without first being aware of and developing your own proactive nature. You can't become principle-centered without first being aware of your paradigms and understanding how to shift them and align them with the principles. You can't become principle-centered without a vision of and a focus on the unique contribution that is yours to make. But with that foundation, you can become principle-centered day in and day out, moment by moment, by living habit 3, by practicing effective self-management. Management, remember, is clearly different from leadership. Leadership is primarily a high-powered, right brain activity. It's more on an art, it's based on a philosophy. You have to ask the ultimate question of life when you're dealing with personal leadership issues. But once you have dealt with those issues, once you have resolved them, you then have to manage yourself effectively to create a life congruent with your answers. The ability to manage well doesn't make much difference if you're not even in the right jungle. But if you are in the right jungle, it means all the difference. In fact, The ability to manage well determines the quality and even the existence of the second creation. Management is the breaking down, the analysis, the sequencing, the specific application, the time-bound left-brain aspect of effective self-government. My own maxim of personal effectiveness is this: manage from the left, lead from the right. Power of independent will. In addition to self-awareness, imagination, and conscience, it is the fourth human endowment, independent will, that really makes effective self-management possible. It is the ability to make decisions and choices and to act in accordance with them. It is the ability to act rather than to be acted upon, to proactively carry out the program we have developed through the other three endowments. The human will is an amazing thing. Time after time, it has triumphed against unbelievable odds. The Helen killers of this world give dramatic evidence to the value, the power of the independent will. But as we examine this endowment in the context of effective self-management, we realize it's usually not the dramatic, the visible, the once-in-a-lifetime, up by the bootstraps effort that bring enduring success. Empowerment comes from learning how to use this great endowment in the decisions we make every day. The degree to which we have developed our independent will is the degree to which we have developed our independent will in our everyday lives is measured by our personal integrity. Integrity is fundamentally the value we place on ourselves. It's our ability to make commitments to ourselves, to walk our talk. It's honor with self, a fundamental part of the character ethic, the essence of proactive growth. Effective management is putting first things first. While leadership decides what first things are, it is management that puts them first, day by day, moment by moment. Management is disciplined, carrying it out. Discipline derives from disciple. Disciple to a philosophy, disciple to a set principles, disciple to a set of goals, set of values rather, disciples to an overriding purpose, to a superordinate goal, or a person who represents that goal. In other words, If you are an effective manager of yourself, your discipline comes from within. It is function of your independent will. You are a disciple, a follower, or your own deep values and their source. And you have the will, the integrity, to subordinate your feelings, your impulses, your moods to those values. One of my favorite essays is The Common Denominator of Success, written by A.M. Gray. He spent his life searching for the one denominator that all successful people share. He found it wasn't hard work, good luck, or astute human relations. Batong word na to, astute. Dili.
Gas na to. Viscous.
Naa.
May lang, halo-halo lang siya.
Astute. Astute. Ba't ang spelling na ano? Astute. Astute. Ano siyang astute? Having or showing an ability to accurately assess situation or people and turn this to one advantage. He found it wasn't hard work, good luck, or astute human relations, though those were all important. The one factor that seemed to transcend all the rest embodies the essence of habit 3. Putting first things first. Okay. The successful person has the habit of doing the things failures don't like to do. The successful person has the habit of doing the things failure don't like to do, he observed. They don't like doing them either necessarily, but their disliking is subordinated to the strength of their purpose. That subordination requires a purpose, a mission, a habit to clear sense of direction and value, a burning yes inside that makes it possible to say no to other things. It also requires independent will, the power to do something when you don't want to do it, to be a function of your values rather than a function of the impulse or desire of any given moment. It's the power to act with integrity to your proactive first creation. 4 generations of time management. In Habit 3, we are dealing with many of the questions addressed in the field of life and time management. As a longtime student of this fascinating field, I am personally persuaded that the essence of the best thinking in the area of time management can be captured in a single phrase. Organize and execute around priorities. That phrase represents the evolutions of the 3 generations of time management theory, and how to best do it is the focus of a wide variety of approaches and materials. Personal management has evolved in a pattern similar to many other areas of human endeavor. Major developmental thrusts, or waves, as Alvin Toffler calls them, follow each other in a succession, each adding a vital new dimension. For example, in social development, the agricultural revolution was followed by the industrial revolution, which was followed by the informational revolution. Each succeeding wave created a surge of social and personal progress. Likewise, in the area of time management, each generation builds on the one before it. Each one moves us toward greater control of our lives. The first wave or generation could be characterized by notes and checklists, an effort to give some semblance of recognition and inclusiveness to the many demands placed on our time and energy. The second generation could be characterized by calendars and appointments book. Characterized by notes and checklist. The second generation could be characterized by calendars and appointment books. This wave reflects an attempt to look ahead to schedule events and activities in the future. The third generation reflects the current time management field. It adds to those preceding generation the important idea of prioritization, of clarifying values, and of comparing the relative worth of activities based on their relationship to those values. In addition, it focuses on setting goals, specific long, intermediate, and short-term targets toward which time and energy would be directed in harmony with values. It also includes the concept of daily planning or making a specific plan to accomplish those goals and activities determined to be of greatest worth. While the third generation has made a significant contribution, people have begun to realize that efficient scheduling and control of time are often counterproductive. The efficiency focus creates expectations that clash with the opportunities to develop rich relationships, to meet human needs, and to enjoy spontaneous moments on a daily basis. As a result, many people have become turned off by the time management program and planners that make them feel too scheduled, too restricted, and they threw the baby out with the bath water, reverting to first or second generation techniques to preserve relationships, spontaneity, and quality of life. But there is an emerging fourth generation that's different in kind. It recognizes that time management is really misnomer. It's really a misnomer. 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 A wrong or inaccurate name of designation. It recognizes that time management is really a misnomer. The challenge is not to manage time, but to manage ourselves. Satisfaction is a function of expectation as well as realization, and expectations and satisfaction lie in our circle of influence. Rather than focus on things and time, fourth generation expectation focus on preserving and enhancing relationships and on accomplishing results, in short, on maintaining the P-PC balance. Quadrant 2. The essential focus of the fourth generation of management can be captured in the time management matrix diagram on the next page. Basically, we spend time in one of four ways. As you can see, the two factors that define an activity are urgent and important. Urgent means it requires immediate attention. It's now. Urgent things act on us. A ringing phone is urgent. Most people can stand the thought of just allowing the phone to ring. You could spend hours preparing materials. You could get all dressed up and travel to a person's office to discuss a particular issue. But if the phone were to ring while you were there, it would generally take preceded over your personal visit. If you were to phone someone, there aren't many people who would say, I'll give to you in 15 minutes, just hold. But those same people would probably let you wait in an office for at least that long while they completed a telephone conversation with someone else. Urgent matters are usually visible. They press on us, they insist on action, they're often popular with others. They're usually right in front of us, and often they are pleasant, easy, fun to do. But so often they are unimportant. Natay. Importance. Urgent.
Wala man lagi
Tay?
wala man pabugnaw.
O, wala pa. Pasa na ako.
Dapat magpabugnaw ka.
Kuha na, unya na lang.
Tatong ikuan diha, ang ikuan nimo Facebook.
Tatay, nagakuan ko. The time management matrix. Urgent, not urgent. Activity number 1. Prices. Pressing problems. Deadline-driven projects. Prices. Pressing problems. Deadline-driven. Important siya. Not urgent. Prevention, PC activities, relationship building, recognize new important opportunities, planning, and recreation. Not urgent, urgent. Important. Not important. Interruption, some calls, some mails, some reports, some meetings. Proximate pressing matters, popular activities. Not urgent, not important. Trivia, VC work, some mails, some phone calls, time wasters, pleasant activities. So, ang urgent is ang deadline-driven project, tapos ang relationship. Hindi nga siya urgent, pero important siya. Importance, on the other hand, has to do with results. If something is important, it contributes to your mission, your values, your high priority goals. We react to urgent matters, important matters that are not urgent, will require more initiative, more proactivity. We must act to seize opportunity to make things happen. If we don't practice habit 2, if we don't have a clear idea of what is important, of the results we desire in our lives, we are easily diverted into responding to the urgent. Ha? Anong number, te?
20. O, dagang kayo ni ng Nel. Dagang kayo.
0935-36-18125.
Magda, o si Papa ni Libet Argilies.
Pilaan ni te?
20, ha? Argilies, o ka nang magwa. Si Libet ba?
Te, tama ni te. 0935-36-18125.
Ang Papa. Double plan, C o B na.
Thank you.
So, nice to. Nice to. So, nice to. Awin. Awin. So, okay naman siya.
If we don't practice the habit 2, if we don't have a clear idea of what is important, of the results we desire in our lives, we are easily diverted into responding to the urgent. Look for a moment at the... So ngayon, bumalik na yung kuryente. So, balik ulit ako. Importance. On the other hand, has to do with results. If something is important, it contributes to your mission, your values, your high priority goals. We react to urgent matters. Important matters that are not urgent requires more initiative, more proactivity. We must act to seize opportunity to make things happen. If we don't practice habit 2, if we don't have a clear idea of what is important, of the results we desire in our lives, We are easily diverted into responding to the urgent. Look for a moment at the 4 quadrants in the time management matrix. Quadrant 1 is both urgent and important. It deals with significant results that require Hello dyan. Brownout sa ito ano. Unang naputol ko. Basta, salamat sa pag-drop. O yan ako tanawa tong imuha ha. After ani. Gani. Nag-discuss siya ano, kailang astang iganga. Naputol ang imuhang ano, aircon. Ibalik ang aircon, i-on ang aircon. Ta mag-August 13 na dyan kay para makaano na ko sa ano, paakyat. May gani na ami power bank maong nakasugami. What bila din nakaano inyong power bank diha? Asin nakapanuga man jud. Amo din hi kay wa jud mi power bank. Kuan mo generator char. Generator na off magani. Nagbasa ko karon sa regarding sa unsay difference sa important o sa urgent. Katawa. Basahan ta ka dyan sa urgent na ano. Quadrant 1 is both urgent and important. It deals with significant result that requires immediate attention. So we usually call the activities in quadrant 1 crises or problems. We all have some quadrant 1 activities in our lives, but quadrant 1 consumes many people. They are crisis managers, problem-minded people, deadline-driven producers. As long as you focus on quadrant 1, it keeps getting bigger and bigger until it dominates you. It's like the pounding surf. A huge problem comes and knocks you down and you're wiped out. You struggle back up only to face another one that knocks you down and slams you to the ground. Some people are literally beaten up by the problems all day, every day. The only relief they have is in escaping to the not important, not urgent activities of quadrant 4. So when you look at their total matrix, 90% of their time is in quadrant 1, and most of the remaining 10% is in quadrant 4. With only negligible attention paid to quadrant 2 and 3. That's how people who manage their life by crisis live. There are other people who spend a great deal of time. So more on sa problem lang sila yung isang klase ng tao. Problem tapos konting action. The other people, there are other people who spend a great deal of time and urgent but not important. Quadrant 3 thinking they're in quadrant 1. They spend most of their time reacting to things that are urgent, assuming they are also important. But the reality is that the urgency of these matters is often based on the priorities and expectation of others. Short-term focus, crisis management, reputation, chameleon character, set goals and plans are worthless, feel victimized, out of control, shallow or broken relationships. Hala, wala pa nagbalik sa inyo ang suga? Sa amo ang nagsuga naman. Sige Sige, i-charge sa dayon na. Bye-bye. Basa ko dire. Short-term focus, crisis management, reputation, chameleon character, set goals and plans are worthless. Feel victimized, out of control, shallow or broken relationship. So, dapat hindi mag-focus doon. It is not important anymore. So, people who spend time almost exclusively in quadrant 3 and 4 basically lead irresponsible lives. Total irresponsibility, fired from jobs, dependent on others, or institution for basics. Dapat hindi ganun. So, effective people stay out of quadrant 3 and 4 because urgent or not, they aren't important. So, dapat yung mga tao na gustong umasenso wala sa quadrant 3 and quadrant 4. Hindi sila nagpapadala ng mga interruptions. Mga some calls, some mails, some report, some meetings, proximate, pressing matters, popular activities. Tanggalon jud din siya na. And 4 is trivia, busy work, some mails, some phone calls, time waster, pleasant activities. Dapat wala na. Quadrant 2 is the heart of effective personal management. It deals with things that are not urgent but are important. It deals with things like building relationships, writing a personal mission statement, long-range planning, exercising, preventive maintenance, preparation, all those things we know we need to do, but somehow seldom get around to doing because they aren't urgent. Bitaw. So, pinaka-importante yung paggawa ng personal mission statement, yung building relationship, pag-exercise, preventive maintenance, preparation. Dapat nga i-prepare. Prepare. To paraphrase Peter Drucker, effective people are not a problem minder. They're opportunity-minded. They feed opportunities and starve problems. They think preventively. They have genuine quadrant 1 crisis and emergencies that require their immediate attention. But the number is comparatively small. They keep P and PC in balance by focusing on the important but not urgent, high leverage capacity building activities of quadrant 2. With the time management matrix in mind, take a moment now and consider how you answer the question at the beginning of this chapter. What quadrant do they fit in? Are they important or are... Pagbabasa ng libro, yung sinagot ko, at saka paghahanap ng mga prospect na pwede naman siyang pumasok dun sa quadrant 2 kasi meron siyang vision, meron siyang perspective, pag-change. My guess is that they probably fit into quadrant 2. They are obviously important, deeply important, but not urgent. And because they aren't urgent, you don't do them. O hindi ko ginagawa siya. Kaya nga, dinidevelop ko yung pagbabasa talaga ng libro in front sa online na para mas manage ako. Okay. Now look again at the nature of those questions. What one thing could you do in your personal and professional life that if you did on a regular basis will make a tremendous positive difference in your life? Quadrant 2 activities have that kind of impact. Oo, magkakaroon ako ng discipline. Magkakaroon ng pre-crisis kaya kasi kung marunong akong maghanap na or marunong akong ng effective management, effective prospecting. Parang kung hindi yung mga crisis na few crisis. Quadrant 2 activities have that kind of impact. Our effectiveness takes quadrant leaps when we do them. I asked a similar question to a group of shopping center managers. If you were to do one thing in your professional work that you know would have enormously positive effects on the result, what would it be? Their anonymous response was to build helpful personal relationship with the tenants, the owners of the stores inside the shopping center, which is quadrant 2 activity. We did an analysis of the time they were spending on that activity. It was less than 5%. They have good reasons, problems one after another. They had reports to make out, meetings to go to, correspondence to answer, phone calls to make, constant interruptions. Quadrant 1 had consumed them. They were spending very little time with the store managers, and the time they did spent was filled with negative energy. The only reason they visited the store managers at all was to enforce the contract, to collect the money or discuss advertising or other practices that were out of harmony with center guidelines or some similar thing. The store owners The store owners were struggling for survival, let alone prosperity. They had employment problems, cost problems, inventory problems, and a host of other problems. Most of them have no training in management at all. Some were fairly good merchandisers, but they needed help. The tenant didn't even want to see the shopping center's owner. They were just one more problem to contend with. So the owners decided to be proactive. They determined their purpose, their values, their priorities. In harmony with those priorities, they decided to spend about one-third of relationship with the tenants. In working with that organizations for about a year and a half, I saw them climb to around 20%, which represented more than a four-fold increase. In addition, they changed their rule. They became listeners, trainers, consultant to the tenants. Their interchanges were filled with positive energy. The effect was dramatic, profound. By focusing on relationships and results rather than time and methods, the numbers went up. The tenants were thrilled with the results created by new ideas and skills, and the shopping center managers were more effective and satisfied and increased their list of potential tenants and list revenues based on increased sales by the tenant store. They were no longer policemen or hovering supervisors. They were problem solvers, helpers. Whether you are a student at the university, a worker in an assembly line, a homemaker, fashion designer, or president of a company, I believe that if you were to ask what lies in quadrant 2 and cultivate the proactivity to go after it, you would find the same result. Your effectiveness would increase dramatically. Your crises and problems will shrink to manageable proportion because you would be thinking ahead, working on the roots, doing the preventive things that keep situations from developing into crisis in the first place. In time management jargon, this is called the Pareto Principle. Pareto Principle. 80% of the results flow out of 20% of the activities. What it takes to say no. The only place to get for quadrant 2 in the beginning is from quadrant 3 and 4. You can't ignore the urgent and important activities of quadrant 1, although it will shrink in size as you spend more time with prevention and preparation in quadrant 2. But the initial time for quadrant 2 has to come out of 3 and 4. You have to be proactive to work on quadrant 2 because quadrant 1 and 3 work on you. To say yes to important quadrant 2 priorities, you have to learn to say no to other activities, sometimes apparently urgent things. Some time ago, my wife was invited to serve as a chairman of a committee in a community endeavor. She had a number of truly important things she was trying to work on, and she really didn't want to do it. But she felt pressured into it and finally agreed. Then she called one of her dear friends to ask if she would serve on her committee. Her friend listened for a long time and then said, "Sandra, That sounds like a wonderful project, a really worthy undertaking. I appreciate so much your inviting me to be a part of it. I feel honored by it. For a number of reasons, I won't be participating myself, but I want you to know how much I appreciate your invitation. Sandra was ready for anything but a pleasant no. She turned to me and signed, I wish I'd said that. I don't mean to imply that you shouldn't be involved in significant service projects. Those things are important, but you have to decide what's your highest priority are and have the courage. Pleasantly, smilingly, non-apologetically, non-apologetically to say no to other things. And the way you do that is by having a bigger yes, burning inside. The enemy of the best is often the good. Keep in mind that you are always saying no to something, if it isn't to the apparent, urgent things in your life. It is probably to the more fundamental, highly important things. Even when the urgent is good, the good can keep you from your best, keep you from your unique contribution if you let it. When I was a director of university relations at a large university, I hired a very talented, proactive, creative writer. One day, after he had been on the job for a few months, I went into his office and asked him to work on some urgent matters that were pressing on me. He said, Stephen, I'll do whatever you want me to do. Just let me share with you my situation. Then he took me over to his wallboard, where he had listed over 2 dozen projects he was working on, together with performance criteria and deadline dates that have been clearly negotiated before. He was highly disciplined, which is why I went to see him in the first place. If you want to get something done, give it to a busy man. Then he said, Stephen, to do the jobs that you want done right will take several days. Which of these projects would you like me to delay or cancel to satisfy your request? Well, I didn't want to take the responsibility for that. I didn't want to put a cog in the wheel of one of the most productive people on the staff just because I happened to be managing by crisis at the time. The jobs I wanted done were urgent but not important, so I went and found another crisis manager and gave the job to him. We say yes or no to things daily, usually many times a day. A center of correct principles and a focus on our personal mission empowers us with wisdom to make those judgments effectively. As I work with different groups, I tell them that the essence of effective time and life management is to organize and execute around balanced priorities. Then I ask this question, if you were to fault yourself in one of 3 areas, which would it be? The inability to prioritize, the inability or desire to organize around those priorities, or the lack of discipline to execute around them, to stay with your priorities in organization. Most people say their main fault is a lack of discipline. On a deeper thought, I believe that is not the case. The basic problem is that their priorities have not become deeply planted in their hearts and minds. They haven't really internalized habit too. There are many people who recognize the value of quadrant 2 activities in their lives, whether they identify them as such or not, and they attempt to give priority to those activities and integrated them into their lives through self-discipline alone. But without a principle center and a personal mission statement, they don't have the necessary foundation to sustain their efforts. They're working on the leaves, on the attitudes and the behavior of the discipline, without even thinking to examine the roots, the basic paradigms from which their natural attitudes and behavior flow. A quadrant 2 falls out of a principle center. If you are centered on your spouse, your money, your friends, your pleasure, or any intrinsic factor, you will keep getting thrown by into quadrant 1 and 3, reacting to the other outside forces your life is centered on. Even if you're centered on yourself, you'll end up in a 1 and 3 reaching to the impulse of the moment. Your independent will alone cannot effectively discipline you against your center. In the words of the architectural maxim, form follows function. Likewise, management follows leadership. The way you spend your time is a result of the way you see your time and the way you really see your priorities. If your priorities grow out of a principal center in a personal mission, if they are deeply planted in your heart and in your mind, you will see Quadrant 2 as a natural, exciting place to invest your time. It's almost impossible to say no to the popularity of Quadrant 3 or to the pleasure of escape to Quadrant 4 if you don't have a bigger yes burning inside. Only when you have the self-awareness to examine your program and the imagination and conscience to create a new, unique, principle-centered program to which you can say yes. Only then will you have sufficient independent willpower to say no with a genuine smile to the unimportant. Calling, urgent. And let us see if it's important or not. M. Urgent? Important?
Jay, may mag-appeal.
Ah,
Gani details.
ha?
Sa gani details, ihatag, tigain ko ba? Ikaw na ikaw, di ko kabalo. Ingon pag di ko nga, explain lang ka sa conference. Okay na, okay na.
So, okay na, okay na.
Okay na, mag-join siya. Bisan dili na daw siya minaw explanation. Bigyan na man ako. Amo, yun sa to na ako. Amo, to nakasabot siya. Dili daw siya minaw. Sumapin daw siya.
Nice kayo siya nga, ano, no? O, sige, kuhan na lang. Hatagin na siya atong kuan kanang iyahang amount nga asa may iyahang kuhaon.
Katong sa starter, tapos gusto niya milk tea o sabon lang. Sa tagong lang daw ipadala. Naman siya sa gawas ba?
Di iya hatag sa iya ang katong content kay para pagkuan asa man siya mag-transfer na siya?
Oo, mag-transfer. Mag-transfer lang daw siya sa kong account.
So kung mag-transfer siya sa account, ang hulaton na lang nato is ang katong kuan. Pwede nag-transfer na ba ka online?
Oh, PDO. Bilang meron na ni mo?
Huh? Ako gani ang naikuan, di ba? Kaya ang katong sa soft drink sa inumon.
Dili. Sa pin boss ba?
Huh? Ay, sunod na to.
Sige.
So, pero ang kuan nimo, kasi tawag anak, para makatuon ka, ikaw na ang magkuan dito sa message. Katuwing gipangayon akong information. Tapos, isend nimo to siya kay, i-email nimo siya, tagang-taga instruction. Pero kuha lang usa ang information.
Oo, sige.
Tapos,
Naman lang dito, no?
naman dito sa katong sample, oo. Tapos,
Okay.
i-email, sendan ta ka og kuan, kung asa i-email. Ay, pwede mo ka mag-email, di ba, diha? Naka-online man ka. Para dito nimo siya i-email.
So, pwede ni mo ma-check sa Monday afternoon. Yung magulang ako laptop kay Melay, no? May mag-technical, chucho man ko. Problema na ako ba? Internet.
Dili lagi. Ilang ka?
Gabi man di ay, 8 to 9.
O, dili ko.
Ulay sabat din na sa inyo?
Mga ito na, dili naman kay close naman ang store. Tapos dito lang, dili lang ka sa tindahan para ano. Or
Na
kaya
may
dito
white
ka.
background.
Ha?
White background.
White background? Ay, mangita. Butangan na tuguan. Kanang puti nga tela. Basi na kay puti nga tela diha.
Oh, na.
Tamtaka lang nato sa likod. Di.
Hindi, pero ikaw pwede maka-check check muna first no sa kuan, sa spec sa laptop.
Oo.
O sige, i-check na daan.
Sige.
Okay. Ha.
Nag-LS ko, kuhaan sa nako. Senda na sa.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye! Kuha na information. So it is ang urgent nga tawag kanina. So automatic siyang tumawag. Tumawag siya kanina, nag-ring ang phone. So urgent siya, kailangan ko siyang sagutin. Pero nangyari na according pa din siya sa plan namin or plan ko na lumago ang business. So important pa din siya. Okay. It's almost impossible to say no to the popularity of a quadrant 3 or to the pleasure of escape to quadrant 4 if you don't have a bigger yes burning inside. Only when you have the self-awareness to examine your programs to create new, unique, principle-centered program to which you can say yes, only then will you have sufficient independent willpower to say no with a genuine smile to the unimportant. Moving into quadrant 2, if quadrant 2 activities are clearly the heart of effective personal management, the first things we need to put first, then how to do we organize and execute around those things. The first generation of time management does not even recognize the concept of priority. It gives us notes and to-do lists that we can cross off, and we feel a temporary sense of accomplishment every time we check something off, but no priorities attached to items on the list. In addition, there is no correlations between what's on the list. There is no correlation between what's on the list and our ultimate values or purposes in life. We simply respond to whatever penetrates our awareness and apparently needs to be done. Many people manage from this first generation paradigm. It's the course of least resistance. There's no pain or strain. It's fun to go with the flow. Externally imposed disciplines and schedules give people the feeling that they aren't responsible for results. But first generation managers by definition are not effective people. They produce very little and their lifestyle does nothing to build their production capability. Buffeted by outside forces, they are often seen as undependable and irresponsible, and they have very little sense of control and self-esteem. Second generation managers assume a little more control. They plan and schedule in advance and generally are seen as more responsible because they show up when they're supposed to. But again, the activities they schedule have no priority or recognized correlation to deeper values and goals. They have a few significant achievements and tend to be schedule-oriented. Third generation managers take a significant step forward. They clarify their values and set goals. They plan each day and prioritize their activities. As I have said, this is where most of the time management field is today. But this third generation has some critical limitations. First, it limits vision. Daily planning often misses important things that can only be seen from a larger perspective. The very language, daily planning, focus in the urgent, the now, while their third generation prioritization provides order to activity. It doesn't question the essential importance of the activity in the first place. It doesn't place the activity in the context of principle, personal mission, roles, and goals. The third generation value-driven daily planning approach basically prioritizes the quadrant 1 and 3 problems and prices of the day. In addition, the third generation makes no provision for managing rules in a balanced way. It lacks realism, creating the tendency to overschedule the day, resulting in frustration and the desire to occasionally throw away the plan and escape to quadrant 4. In its efficiency, time management focus tend to strain relationships rather than build them. While each of the three generations have recognized the value of some kind of management tool, none has produced a tool that empowers a person to live a principle-centered, quadrant 2 lifestyle. The first generation notepads and to-do list gives us no more than a place to capture those things that penetrates our awareness so we won't forget them. The second generation appointment books and calendars merely provide a place to record our future commitment so that we can be where we have agreed to be at the appropriate time. Even the third generation, with its vast array of planners and materials, focuses primarily on helping people prioritize and plan their quadrants 1 and 3 activities. Through many trainers and consultants recognize the value of quadrant 2 activities, the actual planning tools of the third generation do not facilitate organizing and executing around them. As each generation builds on those that have preceded it, the strength and some of the tools of each of the first 3 generations provided elemental material for the fourth. But there is an added need for a new dimensions for the paradigm and the implementation that will empower us to move into quadrant 2, to become principle-centered, and to manage ourselves to do what is truly most important.
Tingnan ka lang yung siga niya. Hindi mo kita niya.
Dapat mapahit sa tayo.
Sulat mo.
So this time, tatapusin ko muna yung page up to page 160. Tapos na ako. 6 o'clock na, kailangan ko din talagang mag-close ng tindahan. So, see you next time and thank you at nakapagbasa ako Nakapagbasa ako ng konti.
Iba nila kung saan pa. Matagot-tagot mo hindi.
Salamat and God bless us all. Bye-bye.